These are two handsome men. I'll say that. These are some great players too. To start round one, this is going to be a great feature match.
So it looks like both players are going to keep 7. Let's go ahead and get things started off. It looks like Anuraag has a card off to the side, so he might be the, yeah, he looks like he's on the play, and he's going to start off with a Ponder, which is one of the cards that a lot of these new Miracles lists are moving to. It was primarily advented over in Europe, a lot of the Mentor 4 Ponder style of Miracles lists that have just kind of migrated their way to the US.
And one thing that's interesting about this is DOS probably assumes that Reid is on Miracles. Reid is known as being a Miracles player, so DOS probably used that Ponder to find something that would be good for the Miracles matchup. So he may be sort of shooting himself in the foot a little bit if he doesn't realize that Reid is on Elves and has taken a card specific for that matchup.
Yeah, I think that a more challenging aspect, or something that could have been worse, is if he would have seen something like a Swords to Plowshares, which is traditionally bad in the Miracles Mirror, and then shuffled it away.
Right.
But because he kept the cards, as long as they're, just wasn't a bunch of Jaces, he's probably fine with whatever he kept. Reid is just going to play Misty Rainforest and pass. Anuraag is going to play a Scalding Tarn and pass back. Reid's going to go to 19 using his Rainforest and go find a copy of Dryad Arbor.
Yeah, this is a little surprising. I would have assumed this Elf deck has so many 1-drops. I'm a little surprised that Reid is going for this first, because this would give the opportunity for Anuraag to use a removal spell here and just essentially Stone Rain Reid's first land. Reid is really looking to have an explosive start. If he had a 1-drop, he would be able to have access to 2 mana this turn. So this is looking to be like one of his slower starts. That said, he's on the draw, and he did keep this hand. So while he's off to a slow start, I would assume that the explosiveness is now coming here with this Cradle.
Yeah, so he's going to play Deathrite Shaman. That will resolve. The Cradle's going to give him 2 mana, and he's going to play a Wirewood Symbiote, but then just pass.
And on the next turn, this Cradle is probably going to be giving a lot of mana. If DOS doesn't have a sweeper, he could do something like end of turn Brainstorm, put a Terminus on top, untap, draw it, sweep the board. That would be DOS's most powerful play. Generally speaking, I would say around turn 3 is where the Miracles player wants to start getting control of the board and sweeping it. So I'm going to be looking for Reid to make a pretty big play on his upcoming turn if he wants to win this game.
Well, DOS is just going to pick up a card for the turn. He's going to use another copy of Scalding Tarn, fall to 18. He's going to get a second copy of Tundra, and it looks like we've got a Snapcaster Mage with a Ponder flashback. So Anuraag basically has to have a Force of Will or be looking for a Force of Will at this point, and it looks like there was in the top 3 cards there. So he does need to protect himself from a potentially game-ending Natural Order this turn, and it looks like he might be able to do that.
Yeah, not exactly what DOS wanted to do on that turn, but hopefully he can just survive this turn and get control of the board on the following turn.
Now this could be a very, very good turn for Reid. If he's able to lead with something like Glimpse of Nature and force a Force of Will out of Anuraag's hand, and then follow up with a big turn and a Natural Order for a Craterhoof Behemoth, he could just win this game here.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with Gaia's Cradle, it basically taps for a green for each creature that he has in play. So Reid can have an extremely explosive turn this turn.
So here is a Glimpse being cast off of that Dryad Arbor. Anuraag is going to fall to 17 using a copy of Force of Will. It's like he pitched another Snapcaster Mage to counter the Glimpse. So Reid has to feel like the shields are down here this turn.
Absolutely. This is Reid's opportunity to make some sort of big play. We'll see what he has. I don't think he would go for a Craterhoof Behemoth if it wasn't lethal, so that's going to require some math. But there's a good chance that it's possible.
Well, there's the Nettle Sentinel.
One of the other things that this deck can do is with Heritage Druid and Nettle Sentinel, you can get tons of mana with those 2 cards. And with the Gaia's Cradle on top of that, Reid probably has access to all the mana he could ask for.
Well, here is 4 mana.
And there is the Natural Order. So Craterhoof Behemoth is going to hit play, give all creatures +4/+4, and
haste and trample.
Yep. And so
and trample. So this is going to be 5, 9, so 19.
19.
And that's going to be enough.
Anuraag has 1 toughness to block with to soak up some of that damage. So it looks like Reid Duke, you know, he did what he needed to do. He had a really big turn 3. And he is going to trample over, take the match. And that was a great turn for Reid too, because he had the Glimpse as the test spell. And if the Glimpse had resolved, Reid most certainly would have won. But the fact that he had the Glimpse plus the Natural Order, that I bet you he had potentially both of those cards in his opening hand, because his hand was a little slow, and he just had that delayed start, but then that powerful turn 3 knockout punch.
Yeah, that game and that turn in particular really showcased just the power of the Elf deck and how it just got super powered by the change of the Legend rule, making Gaia's Cradle much better than it was. I mean, this is a deck that played 4 Cradles before the Legend rule changed. Yeah. So even when they were much worse. Reid's going to pick up that first game over Anuraag Das. Let's go ahead and take a look at the player's sideboard so we can see, what we think is going to happen here. So on Reid's side, we have 3 Thoughtseize, 3 Cabal Therapy, 2 Mindbreak Trap, 3 copies of Abrupt Decay, a Scavenging Ooze, a Progenitus, a Pithy Needle, and a Null Rod. How do you think Reid is going to sideboard?
So I think Reid is definitely going to bring in the Abrupt Decays. They're really good against Counterbalance, and Counterbalance is one way that Reid can get locked out of the game. I think Reid will also bring in some of the discard spells, but I don't think he'll bring in all 6, because he really doesn't want to water his game plan down. He doesn't have that much room for interaction. So he probably wants to have, let's say 3 Abrupt Decay and then 3 Thoughtseize and or Cabal Therapies, but I don't think he's going to have all 6 discard spells.
I can definitely see that. Let's go ahead and take a look at Anuraag's sideboard. We have 1 copy of Predict, 1 Snapcaster Mage, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 2 Pyroblast. You see why he has the Mountain in his deck now.
Yep.
3 Flusterstorm, 3 Wear and Tear, a Containment Priest, and 2 Surgical Extraction. What do you think Anuraag's going to do?
So I think that Anuraag is maybe a little unprepared for this matchup, but I could certainly end up eating my words depending on how he sideboards. The cards that I think he'll bring in are the Containment Priest and then potentially the Surgical Extraction. If he can counter something like a Glimpse of Nature and then Surgical it, that really takes one of Reid's best options off the table. And then Containment Priest works really well against Natural Order.
Do you think he could potentially bring in Wear Tear just as a way to try and combat the Pithy Needles and or Null Rods that are generally in the sideboard of the Elf decks?
He could do that, but with the way that Reid's deck is set up, I don't think Reid actually has enough room to bring in those cards. I think he has more than this is assuming that Das knows Reid's sideboard, so he could bring in the Wear and Tear, but I think that's kind of a rather narrow corner case scenario that Wear Tear could end up sitting in his hand. And he also has the option to just counter a Pithing Needle or Null Rod would it appear.
I can definitely see that. Now Reid is a very powerful magician. He's currently, in the race for the Grand Prix Player of the Year on the Pro Circuit to try and earn a slot at Worlds. And even though this is his first SCG Tour event in a while, he used to travel around and play in a bunch of them. Actually, he is an invitational runner-up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he did lose in the finals. I believe it was to Jacob Wilson.
Yep.
When Jacob won his invitational and became a Monk token. But now I want to talk about the winner of the Season 1 invitational.
Sure.
It was in Columbus, Max McVitie. And he chose to be a Clue token. So he is a mechanical engineer. So we can see there he is pondering how he wants to clean out the clogs and all the pipes here. It's probably under a convention center restroom would be my guess. But you can
actually, I believe I saw him before. He's in the basement on one of those hamster wheels. He's actually powering the whole building. SCG Tour wouldn't run without him.
So you can get these for free just for playing in any of our Opens or Classics on the SCG Tour. And you can get them from all of your orders at StarCityGames.com with a $5 minimum. So as long as you're spending $5 on the site and getting your order, you get one of these absolutely for free. And I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of clue tokens happening in Standard,
Yeah.
so these are going to become a hot commodity because once we have our Season 3 Invitational and we get a
Well,
winner,
new token.
we get a winner that's hopefully me, so I can have another token because that'd be great, then you will no longer be able to get those Max McFeety tokens. So make sure you come out to one of the opens, one of the classics, or order that $5 or more on the StarCityGames.com to get those free tokens.
So it looks like Reid's mulliganing, and wouldn't be surprised, particularly in the post-board games, that Reid is really looking for an explosive hand. Like I said before, I really think that Reid has the advantage on turns 1 through 3, and then that turn 3 is going to be a pivotal turn where things are going to start to turn in DOS's favor. Typically the Miracles decks have a good matchup against the Elf deck because they're able to sweep the board over and over again, and those sweepers are really going to start coming into play on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. That said, DOS's deck is a little bit more mid-rangey, so while he still has a lot of the strengths of Miracles and the way that he's built his deck, he's going to be favored in some other situations more than a normal Miracles deck. I think he's not going to have quite as strong of a matchup as you would normally expect. A lot of times you'll see Miracles players have a card like Supreme Verdict, and DOS does not have that. He also only has 3 counterbalance, which is pretty unique rather than the normal 4.
All right, so Reid is going to keep his 6. Anuraag's going to lead off on a Tundra and a Ponder. Let's see what he decides to do with these 3 cards. Either put them back and draw a card or shuffle the top of his deck. One thing I do want to talk about fairly quickly is with Reid's mulligan decisions, do you think that he might be swayed to keep a hand that might be a little slow but has some interaction with discard spells to try and fight counterbalance when he's on the draw?
It depends. That's a pretty calculated decision. If you're slowing yourself down to interact, that's not exactly better than just being fast and trying to get underneath the disruption. So I don't think Reid is necessarily mulliganing to his interactive sideboard cards. I think he's looking for a good fast hand, and in that fast hand he would also like to see some good interactive cards, but I think the speed of his draw is more important than its interactive potential.
Okay. Well, Anuraag is going to leave those cards on top with the Ponder and draw a card. Reid is going to fall to 19, fetching out a Bayou at the Verdant Catacombs and deploying a Deathrite Shaman. Anuraag's just going to draw off the top, plop that Flooded Strand onto the battlefield, and play Sensei's Divining Top. Reid's going to go into his second turn here, and these decks have the potential to have a little bit of fireworks here, even as early as turn 2. In fact, they can kill on turn 2.
Yeah. This elf deck
with a
is
heavy combo draw. So let's
very,
see what
very
happens.
powerful. And one of the big mana engines is this Cradle, which we've seen both in Game 1 and now also in Game 2. This is one of the cards that really makes the deck tick.
All right, so Quirion Ranger is going to resolve for Reid. He's going to play a Gaia's Cradle, get 2 mana, play a Wirewood Symbiote, and a Nettle Sentinel. Looks like he's just going to get in for 2 with that Deathrite Shaman. He doesn't really have any way to continue to push this mana advantage. We just kind of have to hope here that he just has to hope that Anuraag can't find something like a Terminus in the top 3 with this Divining Top.
Right. And for the most part, Reid doesn't really have a good way to play around a sweeper, which is one of the things that's so difficult for the elf deck in this matchup. For the most part, he just needs to commit most of his stuff and then hope that maybe he'll have just enough in the chamber to reload once if a sweeper does come up, but when you're facing the second or third sweeper, things are going to look really bad for Reid because he's likely going to be out of gas.
Well, it didn't look like there was a Terminus in the top 3 there, but I did see a copy of Wear Tear. So it looks like Anuraag brought those in anticipation of potential Pithy Needle or No Rod out of Reid's sideboard.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons that I'm wary of bringing in those Wear Tears, is because sometimes you draw the Wear Tear and they do have the Pithing Needle and you say, wow, this is great that I have a Wear Tear for this situation. But there's also situations like this one where Reid may not play it. He may not have it in his sideboard if he does have, or he may not have it in his deck. If he does have it in his deck, he may not play it or draw it, and DOS is going to have to brainstorm it away.
Ooh, here we have a Cavern of Souls for Reid. This is something that you don't find in every elf list. But he is going to use it here. He's going to play an Elvish Visionary.
And this is a little interesting. This means that Reid really wants that Elvish Visionary to resolve. So I wonder if Reid is running out of gas.
Well, he does have that Wirewood Symbiote, so it's important to let it resolve. It basically lets him draw 2 cards every turn now, since he can just keep bouncing it.
Yeah, Wirewood Symbiote and Craterhoof Behemoth are the 2 non-elf cards in this deck, and Wirewood Symbiote, specifically the Elvish Visionary, is a really sweet card draw engine, and one of the ways in which Reid can rebuild through a sweeper.
All right, so it looks like Reid is going to remove.
And so Wirewood Symbiote's ability is return elf to your hand to untap a creature, and Reid is flipping the Wirewood Symbiote upside down to designate that he has activated that ability this turn, because it's something you may only use once a turn.
Now it is once each turn, so he can use it
on his
now on
opponent's
his
turn
turn
also.
and then on his opponent's turn. So it gives him, protection of, saving a creature through a sweeper, or even just, bouncing that Elvish Visionary over and over to draw multiple cards each turn. He is going to go ahead and play another Wirewood Symbiote after playing that Visionary for the second time. He's going to use Deathrite Shaman again. All right, well, we're going to get another Elvish Visionary here.
If it worked the second time without Cavern of Souls, it'll work the third time. So Reid has been able to get quite a bit of value off this Elvish Visionary.
It also seems that he has another Cradle in his hand, so the next couple of turns, if he does need to generate just a whole bunch of mana, he does have that ability.
Yep.
Looks like we're just going to crash in for 4. He's going to leave back the Deathrite Shaman so that he can use his Bayou to eat that Ponder out of Anuraag's graveyard and get a couple more points of damage. Anuraag's going to look at the top 3 with his Divining Top. Doesn't really like what he sees, so he's going to put them back. There was not a Terminus there.
Yeah, there was a Brainstorm, but he already has a Brainstorm in his hand, so I could see a situation where he would want to Brainstorm just to, or have access to a Brainstorm just to be able to put a Terminus on top of his library. But since he already has one Brainstorm in his hand, it makes sense that he just wants to shuffle, see a fresh 3 cards on top of his library.
Yep. So Anuraag's going to fall to 14 from the attack. He's going to fall to 13 from the fetch on his Arid Mesa. He's going to find a basic Plains. My guess is we're going to see another spin of the top. Oh, we're just going to Brainstorm first.
And I see a Monastery Mentor. I'm not sure if that other white card is a Terminus. I don't believe it is. I think it's one of the new art Swords to Plowshare. Oh, it might be a Terminus.
That looks like it is.
Yeah. And that is certainly what Anuraag needs. One of the best lines of play he probably has access to is to Terminus and then followed up with a Jace, so that he can just keep drawing extra cards while continually sweeping the board.
Yep. Now these symbiotes are going to be available for Anuraag, so Reid is going to be able to save 2 of his elves.
Yeah, which is quite important. And Reid is likely going to be able to reload after this Terminus, but it's the second and third sweeper that are really going to take the wind out of Reid's sails. Yeah. He can pull some shenanigans with these Wirewood Symbiotes. But it's going to be tough if there's another sweeper after this one.
So it looks like Reid is just going to untap his Deathrite Shaman a couple of times, eat the Ponder that's in Anuraag's graveyard, getting 2 more points of damage. He's going to have a Nettle Sentinel and an Elvish Visionary. He's going to go back to his hand. Anuraag's going to continue on with the rest of his turn here.
And those are definitely the 2 most important elves, because Elvish Visionary allows him to draw more cards, and Nettle Sentinel can be a mana engine with Heritage Druid.
So Anuraag is just going to pass the turn here with 3 mana available. Looks like he does have some counter spells in his hand, so he's going to sit on those. Let's see how Reid decides to navigate this turn. He might even try and bait with a Glimpse here. Looks like that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, I don't actually think this is a bait. I think Reid would really like that to resolve.
Yeah, that's true. He is going to be able to go off from there. Counterspell will take care of it. Here comes a Birchlow Ranger. It will be uncounterable.
And this is kind of like a smaller heritage druid.
Right, there's the Nettle Sentinel. And a Deathrite Shaman.
And so now we've seen Reid reload the board, and he can potentially have an explosive turn on the following turn, potentially even game winning on the following turn. So we'll see if Das can sweep the board again.
Well, Das is going to fall down to 8 using that Scalding Tarn. He's going to find a beautiful copy of Volcanica. I do want to take a second to appreciate.
Yeah, he's got some nice lands.
Just how gorgeous the duels are that Anuraag's playing with. Looks like they are foreign black border. My guess would be German, but who knows? Italian are usually a little cheaper, a little less expensive.
I remember being a little kid at the card store, and they were selling packs of black border German revised for like $8 a pack.
They are Japanese. That is very nice.
Yeah, that is cool. Very, very pretty lettering with that language.
So we're going to get a Monastery
You know, I believe on
Mentor
Star City
here.
there's actually a non-English sale going on.
There is.
So you could pick up some of these sweet Japanese lands on Star City Games potentially.
You can. The Scalding Tarn is Japanese. The duels are Italian.
So Anuraag is taking this opportunity to deploy a threat in the form of Monastery Mentor, and this is going to be a good opportunity for Reid to do something big.
So this Brainstorm is going to bring a Monk along to give Anuraag some defense. It looks like he did pick up a copy of Force of Will, so now he has Force blue card, this could get out of hand for Reid if he's not able to punish Anuraag for tapping down low this turn.
Yeah, we'll see. One interesting tension that we may see come up is if Reid is able to build a board so big that Anuraag feels he needs to sweep it, in which case he would end up losing his Monastery Mentor. So by having Monastery Mentor in his deck and in play at this moment, Das is essentially making the gamble that he doesn't need to sweep Reid's board again. He can just close out the game from here, and we'll see if that's true.
It's also relevant that Anuraag is at 8, and Reid does have that Deathrite Shaman. So if he can find another copy of Wirewood Symbiote, he could potentially just win the game with a few Deathrite Shaman activations over the next couple of turns.
Yep.
Something like Green Sun Zenith would let him even go search it out.
And Reid probably isn't worried too much about this Monastery Mentor yet, but if he takes a big hit from it on Das's turn, he may be looking at lethal on the following turn.
Well, here's that Elvish Visionary. He did use the Cavernous Soul, so it will be uncounterable.
Yeah, so that Cradle generated 3 mana because there are 3 creatures in play. And then Reid used the Cavernous Souls to cast the Elvish Visionary, so he's still got 2 mana floating.
So he's going to go up to 3 mana. Oh, we have an Abrupt Decay.
Oh, and he's got the Abrupt Decay.
That's very good for Reid here.
Yep. And Monastery Mentor is such a powerful card, and a lot of people have been incorporating in the Miracles deck, but it does change the way the deck functions a little bit. You know, this isn't the dedicated all removal, all card advantage version of Miracles. This is a bit more mid-rangey, which makes it a little easier for opponents to interact with it.
Nettle Sentinel is going to get in for 2. Anuraag's going to chump with his Monk token. Reid will just pass the turn back. Let's see what Anuraag wants to do here. He's going to fall down to 7 using his Scalding Tarn.
And
Just
again,
find a basic island.
Das really needs a sweeper. Reid can use his Deathrite Shaman to knock Das down to 5 at the end of this turn, untap, knock Das down to 3, and Reid doesn't actually need much more to close out the game from there.
Yeah. Although something like Plow, snap plow wouldn't be all that bad either.
Oh, that would be good.
Here's a Jace. I think we're just looking for a Terminus to try and flip it with the top.
Yeah, I agree.
Did we find
He
one?
might already have a Terminus in his hand. Jace is just so good. This is one of the cards where every single time I play Legacy, I think, like, why am I not playing this card? Because I'm always playing Temur Delver or Sneak and Show. Sometimes I've had a Jace in my sideboard in Sneak and Show, but really this is one of the, when I think Legacy, I think Jace the Mind Sculptor.
All right, well, Anuraag is just going to put 2 cards back, play a Scalding Tarn and pass. Reid is going to eat a Brainstorm out of his graveyard, knock Anuraag down to 5 and take his turn. Let's see if we can just end the game here.
And Das does have a fairly good opportunity to Terminus here. He's going to be able to crack the fetch, shuffle his deck, use the top to see a fresh 3 cards on top of his library, and potentially tap the top to draw the Terminus to miracle it on Reid's turn, potentially inside of combat. So we'll see what Reid can do here. Reid knows that he's got his opponent on the ropes. So Reid probably wants to find the way to make it so that he can threaten lethal while also playing around Terminus as best as possible. And it seems like this is going to be one of the rare cases where he has that luxury to do so.
Anuraag does have a Snapcaster Mage in hand.
So what's great about this, though, is Das has so little mana, and if he wants to crack that fetch land, you know, this is essentially presenting lethal.
Yeah. This
So
is
Das
this
has
is going
to do
lock
something.
The fetch. It also has the potential to cut Das off of Force of Will. So even if he were to take the 2 points of damage here, like and go down to 4, you know, the Force of Will and the fetch land, like he's not going to be able to use them both in tandem.
And there's a lot of matchups where Monastery Mentor is just great. This is one matchup where Das probably would have preferred to have another Supreme Verdict rather than the Mentor.
Yeah, I think that the Mentor would have been good on the turn that he verdicted. I mean, on the turn that he Terminus, not the turn after.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Das is going to fall to 4. He's going to find an island. Wonder if we're going to see Divining Top or Snapcaster Mage.
I almost feel like he has to go for the Terminus. I don't think he really has a winning line otherwise, and he does find the Terminus. Ooh, lolly.
Oh. We got esports.
Yeah, we do.
That's what I like to spam in the Twitch chat when I see my favorite streamers get lucky. Hitting that 3-outer, Anuraag Das is going to Terminus. He's going to get a counterspell eaten, fall down to 2. But Reid does still have the rest of his turn here, so let's see if he can deploy anything.
I have to imagine the fact that Das has Jace in play, that there's no way that Das runs out of gas from here. Das could be at 1. The fact that he's at 2 means that a fetch land and a Force of Will is still on the table. At this point, he has enough mana to hard cast the Force of Will, and he knows that Reid's basically out of gas. So while every threat that Reid deploys is essentially going to be treated as a lethal threat, this is the point where I believe that Das has essentially won the game. Finding that Terminus was definitely the key moment.
His play has speeded up a little bit here. He's going to Brainstorm with Jace, use a Swords to Plowshares to take care of that Nettle Sentinel. Reid's going to go up to 21, and Reid is going to make Anuraag still have to win this game.
Yeah, well,
you got to kill me.
Reid's so close. Even with Jace and top, there are corner case scenarios where Das will just hit a clump of lands, essentially, and without a shuffle effect, that can be a tough spot for Das. So
we've got a Green Sun for 2. Das is going to spin his top. He's going to let that resolve. Let's see, what is he going to go get?
Probably just get Elvish Visionary.
Draw a card.
That would be my guess. I feel like I've seen him pass through a few Elvish Visionaries already, though. All right, he's getting the Visionary.
And I did see a Pithy Needle in his deck.
So he does have that. So I wonder if it was the discard that he didn't bring in. That would make sense.
That's what it looks like.
He certainly has more sideboard cards than he needs for this matchup, so we get a chance to see which cards he prioritizes. Nice. And this is really what Reid wants to do. He wants to deploy multiple threats in a turn because if Das simply only has to face down one creature, he'll need to find one removal spell, or he can just minus his Jace.
Yeah.
This is the point where Das would really like to see a Monastery Mentor. If a Monastery Mentor hits play here, it's basically game over.
Well, Reid is just going to play a Quirion Ranger, reset one of his lands, pass the turn back to Das. He's going to fire off a Brainstorm. He just has a bunch of Snapcaster Mages.
Yeah, he does have Swords of Plowshares and Terminus in his graveyard, and he only needs one more land to actually flash back a Terminus.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah. Which goes nicely with the Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
You know, just shuffle it back into your deck, draw it again later.
All right, so he does have a Ponder, but he's going to hold off on the Ponder for a turn. He's going to pass back to Reid. So we're likely going to get a Snap Plow on a block.
Yep. So this is a nice 2-for-1 for Das, especially considering he's got the Jace drawing him an extra card each turn. So this is his way of just grinding out Reid.
Das is going to need to tap his planes for that Plow.
And that fetch land will most likely be searching up a Dryad Arbor. So Reid's basically out of gas, but he can. There's still a very, very small window where he could win. It is increasingly getting more and more unlikely, though. A Glimpse of Nature could be something that could be a great top deck, but he still needs to have a lot of things go right.
That lucky Terminus, huh?
Yeah,
You get so many shuffles and looks for it.
Yeah. Das certainly did everything he could to increase his chances of seeing a Terminus, giving him as many opportunities to see it.
All right, so we're just going to see some Ponder, some Brainstorm, some Jace Brainstorm action. Reid is going to fetch that Dryad Arbor on Anuraag's end step.
And this Dryad Arbor can attack this turn. So we may see the Snapcaster on Brainstorm, simply because there's really nothing else to do with it.
So he's going to predict, Flooded Strand, draw 2 cards, and then flash back the Brainstorm.
Predict can be so good in this deck. It's definitely one of the, essentially like the one instant speed card draw spell that this deck plays. It's really nice with Sensei's Divining Top because you can set it up, or with Jace, or Brainstorm, and it gives you a chance to clear the top of your library even when you don't have access to a fetch land.
All right, well, there's a Plow for the Heritage Druid. Now, Anuraag still has to win this game. He just keeps brainstorming with Jace. Let's see if he decides to start plussing Jace now that he has a bunch of Plows and Force of Wills in his hand.
Yeah, Das's main concern, I think, is just the clock. This game is 99% won as soon as that Terminus hit the table.
All right, well, there's a counterbalance.
And we may not see Reid concede at that, specifically because he does have that Cavernous Souls.
Yeah. On 1 is very good. Or on Elf is very good to fight through this counterbalance.
Yep.
All right, so there's going to be another Swords to Plowshares.
Do you think Reid's happy that he's going up to 23?
Probably. If it goes to time, it's highest life total wins, right?
Yep.
All right, Doc's just going to Brainstorm, put some cards back. Got another land. Do we have any Entreat the Angels? No. Looks like he has 2 Mentors and a Snapcaster Mage left in his deck to win if he's not going to use Jace. All right, there's a Snapcaster on the Predict, it looks like. Going to hit a Jace the Mind Sculptor, draw 2 cards.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if DOS decides to start plussing his Jace. Plussing his Jace is, and it looks like Reid is just going to pack it in the interest of time.
So Reid is going to go ahead and scoop it up there. Anuraag DOS is going to even the matchup, 1 game apiece, facing down lethal, finding that third Terminus on the
So
turn
close.
that he needed it.
Yep.
It's pretty nice, not going to lie.
Yeah, that was a nice, exciting moment for our first round, but now we're going to be going back to the sideboards. I don't think either player will make any changes. I think for the most part, they've already done what they want to do. That said, the discard gets a little bit better on the play, so we may see Reid bring in some of that, but I think there's a good chance that he doesn't. The fact that he's going back to his sideboard may just be a show to keep his opponent on his toes.
Yeah, that's normally what I'll do playing in a competitive event. I tend to be one of those players that shuffle my 15 in and take 15 out every single game.
Yep.
So I try to do it quickly, especially when time is a consideration.
Yeah.
And I tend to not pile in between games when time is a consideration, but it's part of my ritual. So I know it doesn't really randomize my deck, but it makes me feel good.
Yeah. One thing that I like doing is just taking 2 cards that I know are definitely not for the matchup and just putting them into my deck, shuffling, and then taking them out. It just makes it a little easier to ensure that you don't make a mistake.
Just got to throw them off.
Yeah.
So one of the hallmarks of Legacy is that there are a bevy of awesome non-basic lands that you get to play. And if you're in the market for some non-basic lands, well, I got good news for you.
Oh, yeah?
The weekly sale at StarCityGames.com currently is on select non-basic lands.
Oh, very sweet.
So this does end Monday at 10:59 a.m. So if you're looking to pick up some sweet non-basic lands, whether it's, expeditions, wastelands, shocks, fetches, etc., go ahead and check out StarCityGames.com for that weekly sale. It does end Monday at 10:59 a.m. So hurry up. And remember, if you spend more than $5, you get a Max McVady token.
It's true. Non-basic lands are kind of where it's at, too. Mana bases, at least from my perspective, are the most solid investment. They're the thing that you always need.
Yeah.
Cards like fetch lands, shock lands, dual lands, they're never going to go down in value. If you're ever looking to buy something for when it's a good opportunity just to save for later, non-basic lands are the thing you want to do this with.
All right, so we're going to start off here for Game 3. Reid Duke's going to be on the plane. He's just going to play a Dryad Arbor and pass. Anuraag's going to lead off with the Tundra and a Divining Top. Let's see what Reid's got.
I'm really surprised by these turn 1 Dryad Arbors. I'm going to have to talk to Reid about this after this round or something.
Yeah, he hasn't played a 1-drop on 1 yet.
Yeah.
So he's just going to have a Wirewood Symbiote and a Heritage Druid.
And this is going to set Reid up pretty nicely for the following turn. If he drops a Cradle and has something like a Glimpse, he could just go off.
Ooh. Anuraag is going to assemble Countertop with his Counterbalance.
Yep.
Let's see here if Reid can start off with an Abrupt Decay and then kind of go crazy.
Yeah, or at least get a Cavernous Souls isn't even that good here because it essentially limits Reid to 1 spell a turn, which is not really a winning solution for him.
Oh, there's the Abrupt Decay.
Big move.
Reid Duke's always got it.
Yep.
He's just going to attack for 2 with his Heritage Druid and Wirewood Symbiote.
And Reid had a couple options when it came to sideboarding, and Abrupt Decay was the one card that I was sure was going to come in specifically because of this, because Anuraag can just run out of Counterbalance. He knows it's not going to get counterspelled or anything, so he's just going to fire it off as soon as he gets it, and it really is so threatening. It can just completely lock Reid out of the game.
Reid's going to Deathrite Shaman here. Anuraag is going to top in his upkeep, play a Scalding Tarn and pass. Reid's going to go into his 4th turn here. He did not have a land on turn 3. Let's see if he can find a Cradle or something to explode his mana here.
Yeah, and this Elf deck doesn't actually have that many lands, so it's not that surprising to miss its 3rd land drop. It only plays 20.
All right, well,
here we go.
Here's the Glimpse. I think we might see a counterspell.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that Anuraag cannot let this resolve. Glimpse of Nature is the big card advantage component of this deck. This is what the deck allows the deck to essentially play like a Storm deck for a turn, where it's just drawing tons of cards, playing tons of cards, and getting tons of mana.
So Anuraag is going to fall to 17 using his Scalding Tarn for a Tundra. An OG copy of Counterspell is going to counter that.
Yeah, really nice.
Glimpse of Nature. Let's see what Reid follows up with on the rest of the turn here. He has to feel like the shields are down, and if Anuraag does want to use resources to stop a spell, it's going to have to be a Force of Will.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if Reid had something like a Cradle, where he could potentially do something with a natural order like he did in game 1. Looks like that's probably not going to be happening this turn, but hopefully he's got something good to do.
So we just got a Verdant Catacombs, another Symbiote. It's going to eat a land out of Anuraag's graveyard. Going to play a Heritage Druid and just crash in for 1. So Reid is on the no Terminus plan.
And one thing that's a little interesting here is if those Wiredwood symbiotes were elves, he could use Heritage Druid to make 3 mana and deploy more cards from his hand. But he still sets himself up in a good place for next turn. If he can potentially get a glimpse to resolve next turn, he'll probably just win on the spot.
Well, Anuraag just drew a white card for that turn. Looks like it was a Swords to Plowshares. I was going to say, hopefully he didn't just put a Terminus in his hand on accident.
Yeah, and I think he could make a solid argument to just fire off the Swords to Plowshares on the Heritage Druid right away. DOS may want to try to bait out another Glimpse of Nature and then Swords the Heritage Druid in response. But the other thing, too, is that Reid has those Wirewind symbiotes to protect the Heritage Druid.
Yep. So Reid's going to fall to 19. That Verdant Catacomb is going to find another copy of Dryad Arbor. Let's see what he can piece together this turn. He has a lot of resources available to him. But Anuraag is just 1 Terminus away from getting a 6 for 1.
Oh.
There's the Cradle.
Reid's got a lot of mana, but it looks like he doesn't have any other cards to cast. That, or he's just choosing to pace himself and wait for Anuraag to make some sort of big move where he taps out for Jace or Monastery Mentor.
So he's going to attack for 5. It's going to bring Anuraag down to 11.
And I think Anuraag might have a Wear and Tear in his hand. I'm not 100% sure about that, but...
So he's going to eat the counter spell, bring Anuraag down to 9.
And it looks like Reid only has 1 more card in hand, and it looks like we're going to be able to see what it is.
He's going to float 6 green. Untap that Deathrite Shaman. Go to 5 green.
So if Reid activates the other Wirewood symbiote, it's going to turn on the Swords to Plowshares.
Go down to 4 green. He's going to be able to do 2 more damage here with that Deathrite Shaman. Bring Anuraag down to 7.
Yeah, and this is really nice play from Reid, just trying to milk every amount of damage that he can out of this turn. And at this point, since he has all this mana, Anuraag is choosing to plow the Deathrite Shaman rather than the Heritage Druid.
It looks like Anuraag's going to be able to find a copy of Monastery Mentor here with his top. And then he can draw into a Brainstorm and then Brainstorm back into the top and potentially a land to make some more monks. So this could be a good turn for Anuraag to try and stabilize here if Reid doesn't draw into anything substantial.
Yeah, if Reid manages to draw a natural order, the game's probably over.
Or Green Sun Zenith even at this point.
Yeah, or Green Sun Zenith. But I do like Reid's or Anuraag's chances for having this Mentor takeover.
Yeah, so looks like Anuraag is going to draw the Mentor in his upkeep with the top. Draw the top for the turn, just play the top. And pass back to Reid. Anuraag does still have Force of Will.
And Reid may choose to just slam into DOS anyway. Nice.
There's an abrupt decay for the Mentor, which is good because things were going to get real scary real fast.
Oh, yeah.
Here comes an Alpha. It's going to attack for 5. Anuraag is at 7. He does have a Monk, so he can use that to kill off one of the symbiotes. It's going to bring Anuraag down to 7. Or down. He's going to take 4 down to 3. Just past the turn.
And again, Anuraag is kind of on the ropes, but this is the point in the game where he can really start to take over. If he can draw a sweeper, it's probably game over. And he's going to be pretty good at treading water here. Right now we know that he has a Snapcaster Mage in his hand with a Source of Plowshares in his graveyard.
So he's going to fire off a Brainstorm. Looks like he also found another blue card to go along with his Force of Will, so he's going to be safe to use that Snapcaster Mage and not have to keep it back for Force of Will.
This game would be pretty interesting if Reid didn't activate that second Wirewood Symbiote, because then his Deathrite Shaman would still be in play.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting to see how this game would be different if that were the case.
All right, Reid is just going to attack for lethal here.
And DOS is going to be able to block 2 of the damage, but going to 1 means he will not be able to crack that fetch land, which is a little bit of a problem.
Now, if he plows here... Okay, so he's going to plow after the blocks. Yeah, that is going to take him to 1.
And without the access to fetch lands, cards like Brainstorm and Divining Top are not quite as good.
Yeah, and that Snapcaster Mage can only block 1 creature next turn.
Yeah, the fact that DOS is at 1 rather than 2 is a very large difference. So he really needs a sweeper right now.
Well, he knows the top 2 cards aren't sweepers, so he gets to look at 2 unknown cards here.
Yep.
This is he does actually get to Brainstorm, so he's going to Brainstorm, see if he can find a Terminus.
If he had a Ponder in his graveyard, that would be so much better than a Brainstorm right now.
No, there is not a Terminus.
He's got 2 Wear and Tears clunking up the top of his deck, and he's going to have to concede, unfortunately. Reid Duke, known as a Miracles player, also a great Elf player before that, you know, kicking it retro, bringing his old school pet deck back to take down what is essentially the most popular deck in the format played by Anuraag Das, which is Miracles.
Well, I would say that Reid is just a great Magic player, regardless of the deck. He is going to take this match 2-1 over Anuraag Das with his Elves deck. Just kind of elf him out. No crazy shenanigans there in that third game. Just good old-fashioned attack you with a bunch of 1/1s. And he is going to win his first round here and be off to a good start for this Worcester Open.
Yeah.